Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Welcome everybody to the fourth and final inspiration hour. I'm Dr. Mimi, aka Mary Isaac. I would like to have everybody go on video so I can take a picture, and then I'd like you to go off of video. I would like you to stay on mute for while the speakers are speaking. And then if you have questions, put them in the chat box and we will try and get to your questions as we go along. But we're going to have Justina speak first. Then we will have Eleeen speak, and then we'll do Q&A. So please note your questions for each of the speakers if you have questions. And do we have everybody up on video that wants to have their lovely face in the picture? I know they all kind of look the same until you find your face and say, oh yeah, that's me. Oh, I'm in a different room. How wonderful is that? Okay, 3, 2, 1, smile. Let me make sure I don't have a separate room here. Okay, we have everybody in one page. Awesome. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We have with us today Justina Sanchez, who's here in San Diego. So some of you may be able to meet Justina at some point in the future. And we also have Eleeen Velez Vega from Puerto Rico, who is joining us. That's where she lives. That's the background of her backyard. No, it's really not.
sure.
Wouldn't that
I wish right now that would be.
Wouldn't that be great? We're going to have Justina speak to us first, and I am going to drive, I think, for you, Justina. Isn't that what I said I would do? Yeah, I think I did.
I can share my screen if you'd like.
I got it here. There we go. Can everybody see that? Thumbs up if you can see it. Thank you. Okay, Justina, take it away.
All righty. My name is Justina Sanchez, and I am a product safety engineer at Tufts America. So a little about me is I am a wife and a mom. I have a 9-year-old little girl. Her name is Lillian, and as of now, she does want to be an engineer when she grows up. On the side, I like to keep healthy. I enjoy exercising, working out, eating well, staying pretty involved at my church. There we are. So what really motivated me in order to become an engineer was that I started working at the company that I'm working for now. 15 years ago, I started at Tufts America, and I started as an admin, just in an entry-level position, and I really saw every day what the engineers were doing. My eyes were opened up to this world of engineering that I never knew exists, and I was so intrigued with it. So one day I decided to ask my boss what I had to do in order to become an engineer. And at that point, it was a short conversation. He literally just said, get your degree in electrical engineering and we'll consider you. So I literally went back to my desk. I Googled electrical engineering schools and I found ITT Tech, which is a trade school. It's a technical school. And I immediately went down there, enrolled, and the next quarter I started and never looked back. I went through the whole program. It was great hands-on training, and thankfully I had engineers who had that same background in order to help me throughout my whole entire school process. So I was really grateful for that experience. So some of the challenges that I have faced being a female engineer is definitely you have to balance it. Balance is key for me in knowing, because I'm a wife and a mom, and my family definitely needs me, and I need to be present in their lives and their activities. And at the same time, my career needs my time and attention as well. And right now, engineering is a really predominantly male-driven field. I work with a lot of men every day. And so we have this as women, we tend to have to feel as though we need to prove ourselves. And I don't know that it's a feeling from us, but it's more, I get that feeling when I'm in the room with other men, is that you're almost not taken seriously. I'll have meetings with clients and sit down with them and they look around like, so where's the guy that's going to help us? And so I have to, it's not until I open my mouth and I start talking technical that these guys really understand, like, hey, this girl knows her stuff, that she's technically competent, and this is the engineer that we're working with. That's just kind of something I've dealt with over the years. And I feel like as time goes on, we are starting to see over the last handful of years a bit more women that I work with. A lot of our clients are I'm starting to see the female faces emerge, which is great, and it's wonderful, and I enjoy working with them because as women, we bring a different perspective to the table. We think different, we operate different, we are a huge asset to any company that we belong to. So that's just a few of the things that we've faced as women. Some of my background is that in 2005, I did get hired here as a project coordinator, which is the entry-level position. 2010 is when I graduated from ITT Tech, and a few months after I graduated, they gave me a promotion to the product safety test technician. So I oversaw all of the activities in the lab, our calibrations. I also became an inspector in our company. And then 5 years later is when I got promoted to a product safety engineer, which is the position that I'm in now. And last year I got my auditor's authorization. So in addition to engineering, I'm also an auditor and go out to other facilities and inspect their quality management systems. So you may be questioning, what is a product safety engineer? What we do is we perform evaluations on items you use every day in your house or out in the world. Anything that would be plugged in, we need to ensure that it's safe for you as the consumer to use. So you'll see here some of your power supplies. We've got jacuzzis and spas, blow dryers, hair dryers, washing machines, you name it. Anything that is plugged in, it has to go through a full safety evaluation and ensure that you meet the government's rules, requirements, and regulations to ensure that nobody's going to get hurt while using those products. So safety evaluation is defined by the engineer. So if you were selling a blow dryer, you would bring that to us. We would determine what product category to apply to it. And for us, that would be considered a household product. So we would then define what tests are going to be applicable to your blow dryer, because some tests that are applicable to your blow dryer are not going to be applicable to your blender. So depending on the product, we have to identify which tests we're going to perform. And then we'll compile a list of all the critical components, which are some of those items you see there. Anything that could potentially cause a hazard is what we would consider a critical component. So those are your fans, power supplies, transformers, inductors, EMI filters, batteries, that kind of thing. And what we do is compile that list, and then as a factory inspector, I will then go to the manufacturer's facility and look at their production line and make sure all of these critical components are exactly the same as what we tested in our lab, because we need to make sure that they're not swapping out or using something different, because that could potentially lead to an even bigger hazard out in the field. Types of hazards that we look for are the electrical shock hazards, energy hazards, fire hazards, heat-related, mechanical, radiation, or chemical hazards. Some of the testing that we'll perform, this is a pretty common one. It's called leakage current. And what it is we will apply power to your unit. So if you have that blow dryer and you would plug it into the wall, if it loses ground for any reason, we want to make sure that you're not going to get shocked if you were to touch any part of the plastic or the metal on it. So we will plug it in, we'll drop the ground connection, and then apply full power to it and measure the current that's coming off of there to ensure that if that happened in a real world situation, that you wouldn't get shocked from it. Another test that we perform is called capacitance discharge. And what we do is we will apply power to the unit and then we'll shut it off real quick, and we will take measurements to see how long it takes for that energy to dissipate. And the point of that is if you were to plug in, if you had that blow dryer and you pull it out of the wall and you immediately touch the prongs on it, we want to make sure you're not going to get shocked. So we need to make sure that within that first second, all of the energy dissipates out of that blow dryer's prong so that you don't get shocked if you were to go to touch it or you drop it and reach for the prong real quick. So those are just some of the things that maybe people don't think about every day, but they, are real world situations that we have to consider. Some of the other types of tests we perform are environmental safety tests. So these are things that are going to be exposed to outdoor. A lot of your LEDs, different lighting fixtures, or electrical component housing boxes have to undergo environmental testing. And so what you'll see here is the first picture is a big stream of water where we shoot so much water pressure, like at a big enclosure. If it were like one of those transformer boxes you would see out on the street, and a sprinkler were faced at it or something, that's kind of what these simulate. So that's a high pressure nozzle. That second photo is a rain test fixture, and that's for any products that could potentially be exposed to rain, or even a lot of medical equipment that when it's in the hospital, it could be exposed to those IV drip bags or any of the other liquids, even blood things. You would never know what they're going to come in contact with. So we need to simulate a real world situation. The other one that looks like a shower is pretty much that. So different parts of the world experience a lot more and heavier rain than other parts. So that's just another form of a rain test with a lot more rain and a lot more pressure. And here we go. This is another environmental test we perform is a dust test. And what this simulates is products that are exposed in parts of the world that are really dusty. So there's some places where you experience a lot of rain and sandstorms. That's what it simulates. So we'll put the product inside the dust chamber, and then depending on how big it is, we'll set it for 2 to 8 hours, and it sits there and circulates dust around it and simulates that outside condition. And what we do from there is we open it up and we evaluate that to make sure that none of the dust got inside and collected on any of the electrical components that could erode the components or cause corrosion and that kind of a thing. If you notice in that last picture, those two people on the side, so that girl right there is Madeline Nguyen. If you were here yesterday, you may have heard her speaking. So Madeline is my mentee, and she got to intern with us here last summer. So this was her performing a dust test with me last summer. So at the end of an evaluation, when they've met and passed all of the tests, we will provide them with a certificate of compliance. And now they can take that and they can go sell to different parts of the world, US, Canada, Europe, Asia, anywhere they want to go that they've applied for, they take their certificate, and this now gives them the freedom to go sell their product. So a safety evaluation is important because we want to reduce the risk of injury or damage to anybody that could potentially come in, whose path could cross or they use this product in the real world. We just want to reduce the amount of safety hazards that they could potentially be exposed to. And so that's why we have to do them and why they're important. We just need to ensure that it's safe for everybody. It's a lot of things that people don't think about when you're using them, but when you step back and think about the reality of it, you kind of realize how important and why it's important. My advice for future engineers would be, if you're interested in it, to pursue it, to be around it, get your hands on it. What you all are doing here is great. Get a good feel for what it involves, ask a lot of questions, and just be around people who are in that world. My word of encouragement would be for you to pursue your aspirations in whatever they may be. Be prepared, show up early, do the work, and do it well. If you don't understand, ask. A lot of people are willing to help you and guide you and show you more than you would ever think. People are really willing to share their knowledge, and you can do this too. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Justina. And now
You're welcome.
let me switch, let's see if we have any questions in the chat yet. Not yet. So let's switch over to Puerto Rico. And let me
There we
get
go.
the right view. Full screen. There we go. And Eleeen.
Gracias. Hi. So we'll do it in Spanish. How about that? No? I'm kidding. Okay, so yeah, well, I had to ask, right? Just in case. So thank you, Mary, for inviting me here. You can all hear me well, right? Yes, good. I have a speaker here that wasn't working that great earlier. So yay, we're doing good. Well, I'm super excited to be here. As Mary said, I am from Puerto Rico, and I've been blessed to be able to come back to Puerto Rico to work here. I'll give you a little bit of what my story was, but the beach in the background that you see there is actually one of my favorite beaches in Puerto Rico. It's called Flamenco Beach in Culebra, which is a tiny little it's a tiny little municipal island off of the east coast of Puerto Rico. So this place back here is real. So anyways, oh, Mary, next one. I was gonna move it myself. Okay, so I wanted to start with just a quote that I think is very important. And I'll talk a lot about challenges and how I've had an amazing career, but I've also had a lot of ups and downs, and those are okay. And many times we have to be flexible to how we deal with the things that happen to us. And this one is really good. I saw it many years ago at a conference, and it said that life is 10% of what happens to you, and 90% of it, how you react to it. So many things can happen to us, but everything depends on how we react and how we get back up. So that's important to always think of, because we might have a plan and it might change, but we can adapt to it. We have to be flexible without losing the end goal. So you'll see a little bit through that of what I've been through in my career to get to where I am today. Next, Mary. So I wanted to start with this because I listened in on one of the sessions that you had on Tuesday with Lana and Charity. This picture is actually from my alma mater, University of Puerto Rico at Maya West. It's a very old photo. As you can see, women used to go to college with dresses and high heels, and all their hair was done. And this picture is in Puerto Rico, probably 1970s, I think. And that's actually still that's actually Justina, the electrical engineering department at our school, the University of Puerto Rico at Maya West. So, but I did want to give you all a little bit of a snapshot of what Latinas, or the percentages of Latinas in STEM. And you probably have heard some of these numbers throughout your STEMinist camp. And to me, these numbers are always very inspiring, and also a wake-up call, because there's still things we need to do. Well, women in STEM fluctuate about 26% in 2018, but Latinas in STEM are about a 2 to 3% of the workforce. So when we go out in the field, we sometimes don't see a lot of people that look like us. So looking for role models to follow, or where can I be in 20 years? Sometimes that's a hard thing to do, but I've taken it in my career as an encouragement or motivation to be that role model for younger students, for younger girls, for younger professionals. So sometimes when we don't see ourselves projected in others, doesn't mean that we're not going to get there. Justina and I were talking earlier about sometimes people tell us, okay, great, that's great. And that's not why I did it. I did it because it was a goal of mine. And it didn't, to me, it didn't look impossible because I didn't see anybody that looked like me. It was an encouragement, because then people will see you and say, well, if she did it, I can do it too. So it is important for me to maybe I won't see myself there, but you can see yourself in me. So next. And that's me, that's my husband and my daughter. I also have a daughter. She's 9 years old. Her name is Ana Isabel. We were actually participating of a community event there a few years ago. I am from Sabana Grande, Puerto Rico, which is a tiny little town on the west coast of the island. I live in the San Juan metro area now. So if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, you probably flew into the San Juan airport. Well, I live about 15 minutes from there right now. I have my master's and bachelor's degree from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez, master's from Mississippi State University. I am a civil engineer by education, and I do airport engineering work. And I'll tell you a little bit of what I do now. I work for Kimley Horn. I have done I've worked in other places. I started my career in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And I'll show you some photos of some really awesome internships that I did when I was in college. Next. Okay, so while I was in college, I did 2 internships that were amazing. I always encourage students to consider doing internships when they are in college, because it gives you an idea of what maybe an engineer is doing, or if it's actually what you really want to do for the rest of your life. So I did 2 internships. One was at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and that was super fun. It didn't start as a technical internship. I'm only 5 foot tall. So you can imagine, just give you, you might want to do this, do a poll. What do you think I was doing at Disney? I was Mickey Mouse, literally. Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Brer Rabbit and Meeko from Pocahontas. I did that in Animal Kingdom for 10 weeks in the summer. It was very hot, but I loved it. It was so great. It was so fun. But I knew that there was way more than just doing that at Disney. So when I was there, I spoke with my supervisor and told them, I'm participating in the college program. I want to talk to an engineer at Disney, because engineers are everywhere at Disney. I can't just be here for the whole summer and not meet one. So he actually paired me up with the civil and structures engineering chief of Disney. So I was with the guy that does like structural engineering and all these amazing things at Disney. So I shadowed him for for the time that I was there, and it was amazing. So after that internship, having that experience on my resume actually got me my goal internship, which was also always to work at NASA. So I worked at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center for 2 years. I was a co-op student, and it was amazing. I did research in infrastructure, space infrastructure. Marshall Space Flight Center was a great place to be and to grow as an engineering student. So I will always recommend students to do internships. This is definitely, to me, is a highlight of my college career life.
So I want to ask you a question though. So when you talk about internship, usually internships are not paid and co-ops are paid, right? Is that how that worked for you?
Yes, both my internships were paid, and I also got college credit for both of them.
Oh, cool.
So I was able to, you always do a presentation or a report at the end of the summer, and my school allowed us to have free electives for internships. So I got about 18 credit hours for my internship, so I never really lost time towards graduation.
And you got paid.
And I got paid.
Yay!
I did get paid very well too. Okay, so my first career or job was at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which is a federal agency, and I already had experience working with a federal agency with NASA. At the time when I graduated, the Columbia shuttle had exploded. That was 2003. So you could probably now understand why I didn't stay at NASA. It wasn't a good time to go to NASA because of what was going on. It was very uncertain, very sad times. So as I was graduating, I received an offer from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers doing airfield pavement research. And I thought that was going to be super fun. So I decided to take a chance and go with the Corps of Engineers. And I moved to Vicksburg, Mississippi. That was a little different than Puerto Rico, just a little bit. So it was the culture and the language and everything was different. But I got to say that I love my job at the Army Corps of Engineers. I never say anything bad about it. Mississippi was a culture shock and it was a learning experience, but I still have amazing friends and family from there because they became part of our family since we were so far. My husband, a boyfriend at the time, also got a job with them. We got married 2 years after and decided that we wanted to have a family closer closer to Puerto Rico. So we moved to Florida and I got a job with Kimley Horn and Associates, which is the next slide. Well, actually, no, we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But what this slide is in here for is right before I talk about my current job, is when I started as a professional and even as a student, I was very involved in professional organizations like Society of Women Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers, and they always helped me develop into more leadership roles. It helped me develop my self-confidence with public speaking. It increased my network tremendously. So when I started in working in the Corps of Engineers, I decided I was going to stay involved in these professional organizations. So I've been able to get to the board of directors at the Society of Women Engineers, that position I'm doing right now. I just started this year. I've been a member for 20 years. And I've gotten a lot of awards and a lot of opportunities to speak to students like all of you, to young professionals, speak at international conferences. And it's amazing to feel that you're doing something back to the profession, but also when your peers and these organizations recognize you for what you're doing, you kind of even feel even more motivated to continue, because you say, okay, so I'm making a difference. You don't need an award for that, but it's always good for you to feel recognized and to push yourself even farther. So all these pictures that you see here are from work that I do with these organizations and with students as well. And I take my daughter to most of everything, just because I want her to experience everything as well. And next. And this is Kimley Horn. So I work for a company called Kimley Horn and Associates, particularly Kimley Horn Puerto Rico LLC, which is an office that I helped open in the firm in 2010. So it's the first office that Kimley Horn has outside of the continental US. And I helped open that because it was a personal goal, and we had clients that were asking us to do work in Puerto Rico. So they asked me to help with opening the office, because the first day I got to that company, I said, I want to work in Puerto Rico. So they said, find us a project and you'll go there. So this is a civil engineering firm. We do everything in civil engineering. It's a consulting firm. And I am particularly in the aviation group. I'm an aviation project manager, which means that my clients are airports or related to aviation. And I started as an analyst very, very early without a license. I got my professional engineering license, became the project manager. And then in 2010, I helped open the office in Puerto Rico. And in 2014, I relocated back to the island after being away for 11 years. I came back to Puerto Rico to manage this Puerto Rico office and to grow it into a stable office like the offices we have in the United States. Next. So back in Puerto Rico, it's been amazing. It's been also very challenging. I think that this is where the part changes a little bit, that sometimes things just don't go the way you planned. And when I moved to Puerto Rico, I was very excited, and everybody kept saying how you should be used to Puerto Rico, so this should be super easy for you. But moving back to where I came from was not the same. I was here, I was a student here, I grew up in Puerto Rico, but I had never worked in Puerto Rico. So I had to relearn Spanish. Spanish is my first language, but when I came here to speak to the locals, my technical language was English. So having to learn the local lingo and what things were called in Spanish was difficult for me, and I was native. So that was also a challenge to just come back. There was a lot of, who is this girl? Like, I think Justina said it, like, you're the girl. So everybody sees you like you're managing the office and you're the project manager. So you go to these huge construction sites at the airports. I remember one time one of the contractors had spoken to me on the phone, and when I got there, he says, no offense, ma'am, but I thought you would be older. So, you know, you get these comments and you're just like, yep, this is what you get. It's just me. So it takes a little bit of time for them to trust you, and they want to prove that you have to prove yourself that you're actually really good at what you do. So every time that I get to a new project or a new office or a new company, I've always had to go through that challenge of, she sounds really young, because my voice sounds very young. She looks young. What is she gonna know? So it takes a while for people to accept and take you seriously. So don't get discouraged by that. It is a little bit of a hassle, and you have to prove yourself 3 times as hard. But when you know your stuff and when you're good, they will know that, and you will be able to get your message, and they'll respect you. It just takes some time. I've been in the island, back to the island, about 6 years now. At the beginning, it was very challenging because I had left Puerto Rico in 2003 when I graduated, and I was coming back with an American firm. So some of the locals saw it as, you came back and now you think it's going to be as easy as you did it in the United States, or you're coming back to take the money out of the local market and take it back to the United States, or what makes you think that you can be here and just, you know, you're just going to win projects? I mean, it's very hard for us. Why is it going to be easy for you? So there was a lot of reverse discrimination of not being accepted by your local native people. And that to me was a shock. I had to understand how to deal with it and how to make sure they knew that I was committed to the island, that I had left because of a college and work opportunity, but I was serious about coming back and returning, giving back to the island what it had given me so I could go out into the world and be successful. So coming back to Puerto Rico was definitely a challenge. And I had to learn how to work with the local companies and with the local firms. Everybody that we've hired to work in the office is from Puerto Rico. All the sub-consultants that we use for our projects are from Puerto Rico. So what we wanted was to show the locals that we were committed to the island. And that has taken some time. I mean, it's been some very interesting 6 years. And if you watch the news, you probably have seen that Puerto Rico has some political and economical issues. So those have also been part of the adjustment period that I've had to go through in my 6 years here. Next. And then in 2017 came Hurricane Maria. So on top of everything being very difficult on the island because it's just not the same way I was used to doing business, Hurricane Maria destroyed everything. Our office, I was down to 2 people in the office from 5 people. I had some issues retaining staff, and it was just me and the admin assistant. So we had to rebuild an office. I had to rebuild it after a major hurricane had destroyed everything. So we had a very big project. As I mentioned, we're a civil engineering firm. So when the hurricane happened, or after the hurricane, we had a lot of rebuilding and a lot of building assessment work to do so that we could determine if the buildings were safe for people to go back in them. So I did a lot of work around the island on different shopping centers and different buildings to see if what damage post-hurricane had been and how can we fix this and put it back together. My daughter was out of school. There was no school. There was no power, no communications, no nothing. So my daughter down there, when you see her with a hard hat, she was one of my coworkers for about 2 months. She would go with me to the assessment. It was 3 of us in the team, 3 engineers, 3 female engineers too. So you could tell when we would get to a project, they'd be like, so it's just the 3 of you. Like, this is the team. So, yep, it's the 3 of us. And we're gonna get this done. And we would go up the stairs and the shafts and go up to the roofs and walk them and go down. It was like, we're good, we can do this. So it was very extreme work. It seemed like extreme sports for us. And that picture in the middle that you see there is one of my coworkers that came to help us, brought all that with her on her luggage on the flight from Florida to Puerto Rico because we couldn't find any supplies. So it was a lack of resources, and every utility commodity that you have, we didn't have it because the island had been completely destroyed. And
So,
a picture there. Okay.
Question, Eleeen, how long did it take you to the island to recover? Like get your energy back? How long did it take to get your power back, etc.?
So for us in the metro area, it took 77 days. So 2 months and 2 weeks, 2.5 months. For my in-laws in the mountains, it took 6 months. Some people took a year, and it's been 3 years post-hurricane, and the island is still recovering. So the power system is still very fragile. So that's why when we have this call, I have you guys on my computer, and I also have you on my cell phone, because we have a lot of power outages on the island still 3 years later. And when the power goes off, we lose our internet. So it's a challenging way to work from home because we're all working from home. So we've had to be very creative on how we get our projects done. And we just have to adjust to the situation. So.
Okay, sorry for the interrupt.
Oh, no. Well, next slide. And that one before that, the COVID hit. So yes, after we recovered, our work increased after the hurricane. I mean, we have a lot of work in the airports. There are 10 airports in Puerto Rico, and I provide services for them as far as design and construction. So I do the pavement design for runways and taxiways and aprons. We make sure that the air side of the airfield is in accordance with the Federal Aviation Administration guidelines. So I'm working at airports every day. My projects are in infrastructure mainly, but we also work in the side of the land side. When people come in and drive into the airport, that's called land side. And we also work in the terminals inside the buildings. So right now we have a lot of work in the island, mostly airport work. And after the hurricane, the workload changed. We have a lot more work than we did before. The airports have a lot of federal funds, so there's a lot of money that comes into these airports. And then COVID hit, and we were in the middle of finishing up 6 different airport projects. So you can imagine the craziness of having to finish 6 different airport set of plans, because we do plans so that contractors can come and build whatever pavement or whatever infrastructure improvement we've done to the airport. I had to work with people remotely from all across the United States. I have a team locally of 6 people. Well, at those times of COVID in March through June, my team went from 6 people to 55 because none of us could see each other. Everything was virtual. So I had people from California, Reno, Chicago, Florida, Texas, working on our projects, and the ones in Puerto Rico, and everything was virtual. So we've definitely have changed the way that we do business and how we do our work because we had to adjust. And this here, I put here, you have to trust your team. I have an amazing team. Mary, if you can go to the next one. These people are my team of coworkers. They're from Puerto Rico and from other offices in the firm. And I can't do this work by myself. When you're an engineer or when you're in any STEM field, you work in teams. Like Justina was showing pictures, we always need a team. And if you're the leader, as I'm the office leader, you have to be able to communicate efficiently with your team and to be considerate of others and what their situations are. So this COVID has taught us to never underestimate communication, because we are definitely all virtually, but now we're probably communicating more than ever because we have to. There's like no other way to do business if you don't call each other or see ourselves in the screens. But I've learned to rely on my team and to train them and to have and to just have so much respect for the people that work with me. And also they've made me a better leader because now I know how to help them through different situations, especially this one that none of us were ready for the COVID. So next. And plan B. Sometimes life, I said at the beginning, does not go as planned. And in 2010, as I had just helped open the Puerto Rico office, I was 5 months pregnant and I was diagnosed with cancer. So a lot was going on at that time. A new office, I was having a baby, and then by shock, I got diagnosed with cancer. So talk about a rough year. It was definitely one of those things that you're just thinking, what did I do? How am I gonna get this done? I had an amazing support from my family and also from the company that I was working with. I had to stop working for about 2 years so that I could recover. And then when I came back to the office, all my clients were transitioned to co-workers. And when I came back to the office, I had to adjust to re-entry into the field, but they were very supportive and they asked me, so are you ready to go manage the Puerto Rico office? And I thought, well, after all the struggle that I had, I thought you didn't want me to do this anymore. But what you build, when you build a strong reputation and a strong foundation at your firm and your career, it precedes you. So I was very glad that I was able to still, after this mess of a very long journey and battle with cancer, I came back to work and I still had the opportunity to come to Puerto Rico to manage the office. So the way I thought about it, because everybody kept saying, you are crazy going to Puerto Rico, those people over there have a mess. After I went from this experience of the cancer with a baby and having a newborn, and I also had a stem cell transplant in 2012, what I told everybody was, I went through this. I can do anything. You know what? I went through this. There's nothing that I'm more afraid of. So I just took it as, yes, the Puerto Rico office will be a challenge, but sometimes other things are even worse and we get through them by the grace of God or just our determination that it's not gonna kill us. But definitely sometimes things happen and that's when you have to adjust and have some flexibility and you have to adapt. And hey, my plan A didn't work, but so far I'm okay. The hair grew back. My daughter is 9 years old and I'm leading the office in Puerto Rico. So, it could be really rough for a while there, but you can't ever give up and think that it's over. You have to fight until you get through it. So next. So anyway, so my last words of advice out of everything that I've spoken to all of you. Strong communication skills are very important. If you speak another language, that is even better because you can communicate with other cultures. And I've seen in my career that they asked me for a lot of help with with projects that needed a Spanish translator or countries that they needed somebody that would speak Spanish. And I loved being able to do that. So if you want to learn a second language, that is a great advantage that you'll have. And even not just another language, but strong communication skills are everything. Public speaking, the way you carry yourself. You don't even have to open your mouth. And when you go into a meeting or an office or a camp, people have 30 seconds to make an impression on you. And it's very hard to change that first impression afterwards. So your communication is also part of how you carry yourself and how you enter a room. So you always have to remember that, how you shake your hand, if you do eye contact. So self-esteem is something that, self-confidence is something that shines through even before you start talking, okay? I think that for all of you that are students, when you find something that you really like, do your homework, become an expert in your field so that you are needed and you are not easily replaced at work, okay? Follow through, control your emotions. I always tell people, if you need to cry, go to the bathroom, cry, and then come back. So I have that thing about not going and crying at a meeting where the guys are gonna be like, uh-oh, because they don't know how to deal with that. So I avoid that at all costs.
Yes,
Write thank you letters, ask questions like Justina was saying, that is super important. Don't think that there's a stupid question, or you really should speak up if you have a question. You might be surprised of how many other people have that question and they don't really want to say anything or don't have the courage to just speak up. I also want to say, have fun, always have a hobby, and remember that health is really important. If you're not healthy, you can't do anything. So I have to apply this to myself every day. But family and health are one of the most important things, and you can't ever forget that. And you always have to think big, okay? There's nothing we can't do if we really work hard to achieve it. Next. And this is just a photo that I wanted to share. This is from 2011 when my daughter was 3 weeks old. And this was last year in December. We recreated the photo. You know, we are stronger than what we think. And sometimes bad things happen to us, but it doesn't define the rest of our lives. So if you ever see yourselves as having a really hard time or a really hard situation, just think that you can bounce back from that even stronger and better. And you can do whatever you want. I always say, you can do everything, just not everything at the same time. So you have to choose what you're going to prioritize and just work really hard to achieve it. So next. And that's it. That's at the San Juan Airport. I took that photo on sunset. And that's my email if any of you ever want to reach me.
that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I was just thinking back when I met you. I was living in Memphis at the time, and you were region governor.
I was.
So,
That was 2009. Yes.
2009. Okay. Let me do a stop share here. So, well, that was awesome. So, questions, young ladies. I'm going to go into gallery view here so that I can see who might be having some questions for either Ms. Sanchez, Justina, or for Eleeen.
Don't be shy.
Yeah,
You gotta leave that shyness away.
We've got some time here. So what was the time lapse between when you went to work for Kimley Horn? I'm just thinking, and then you had your cancer situation that you had to deal with, and then you ended up coming back to work. How long did that take?
Okay, so I started at Kimley Horn in 2006, January of 2006. I had my daughter in December of 2010, so that's when I was sick. And then I moved to manage Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico office in March of 2014. So I've been with Kimley Horn for about 15 years. I was with them 4 years when all this happened, when the craziness happened. And I had been with them for about 8 years when I moved to manage the Puerto Rico office.
And they were supportive to the—
They were supportive.
And that is so important. I have to share with you from a company perspective, being sick. When I was in my early 40s, I had a tumor at my company, and they were extremely supportive. And so having the experience and having a company that can back you. So when you look for a company to work for, that's going to be an important aspect for all of you as you go.
How they treat their employees during hard times is critical for you to know if you're working for the right firm. it also builds loyalty, because for them, the way that I was treated, I'm very loyal to them now because I'm very grateful. And just to give you a sense of what they did for me, I was gone for about 2 years. But when I was in my stem cell transplant, I couldn't get any visitors, and I was isolated for about 3 months. And they sent me a ball, a beach ball, with all their signatures on them from my team and HR and marketing and a bunch of, it's a ball. They put a stamp on the ball and they mailed it like that. So it came to the hospital with the stamp on. It was just a ball. And I was like, I didn't even know you could mail a ball, but it was so nice. They're like, we thought you would be bored, so we sent you this ball with all our encouraging messages. So it was really sweet, and simple things like that, encourage you to come back and get better. And just, I have to get better. Those people actually really love me. So.
Yeah. And once you get through to the other side and you can see the other side, it does put a new perspective on your how well you're going to balance your work and home life too. Yes. So that you make sure that you take care of your health. And I can tell you here at age 65 years old, your health, take good care of your health. Yes. Stretch. Yes. Do all that stuff. You got that right. So take good care of yourself. Make sure that you're getting your teeth cleaned. Make sure that you're having your dogs that are you take care of a little stress relief, make sure that you're taking care of your health, because it's all part of that. So a question came in, and this is for both of you, I think, maybe not, maybe for Eleeen. Have you always been the head of a team? Like since you've been a little girl, have you always been, when you go and get involved in a team, do you always come in and take charge, or like in a little girl?
Well, not when I was in elementary school. My mom always says that something happened to me after I left elementary school, because I was very shy and I really wasn't, okay, I've always been like this, a little bit of very passionate and very like expressive. But after 7th grade, I started getting involved in everything. And I lost the fear of speaking in front of people. And I felt that actually one of the things I didn't say in the advice was, you need self-initiative. You cannot wait for anybody to come and do anything for you. If you want to be in an internship at NASA, I went to the office, saw the application, filled it out, sent it in, made the calls. I never let anybody left it off to fate, maybe it'll fall in my lap. I always went for it, but it was after 7th grade where I kind of got out of my shell and decided that I was going to speak up more and that I was going to be really brave. I think it also happened because I went from a very small rural town, very small school, to a school in the city that was humongous and I didn't know anybody. So I was forced to actually speak up and so I could be recognized and not have to be shoved into the corner because I was so quiet. So that kind of changed the perspective, and I always do like to lead. You also always have to know how to follow as well. So sometimes when you're in a team, you have to recognize if it's needed to step up and be the leader, or if it's okay to sit back and let others lead. I do that a lot with my team now. You have to step back and let somebody do the leading or delegate, because if not, then you're not a good leader because you're never letting other people grow. So definitely I've learned how to do both things. And when I started at the company, I was an analyst. I wasn't a leader. I'm a leader now in my organization, but I did start as just as a simple analyst doing plans and calculations. And then I went up to the ranks, and here I am today.
Thank you. That was a great question, Malia. How about you, Justina?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what she has to say. Don't leave your future and the potential up to somebody else and in somebody else's hands. You have to go out there and reach for it. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but you yourself need to take your future into your hands and go out and grab it. At our company here, I have last year started a women's network, in which we didn't have before, but it was something that I felt was needed. And so I went out and I got in touch with our VPs, got in touch with our CEO, even putting together a presentation to ask for a budget request for it. And now we have this women's network that's well over 100 ladies throughout North America. We hold, different seminars and webinars, have life coaches come in to talk about balance. We have financial advisors come in to talk about with the ladies on how to balance your finances, how to get those in order. We do strengths finders test, like it's just been so beneficial. But that wouldn't have happened if I just didn't reach out and make the effort to grow that, from something that was nothing to something that's really valuable for a lot of people now. And that's to say to you, you can do anything. You just have to step out. We don't grow in our comfort zone. So a lot of times it takes some stretching, it takes some courage, but the answer is always going to be no if you don't step out. So go out and ask. It's okay. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they'll tell you is no, but oftentimes people are willing to listen to what you have to say and help you get there.
And I like the phrase, lead, follow, or get out of the way. Because it's one of those things. You have to make a decision about what you're going to do. So and one more question, and then we're going to have to go for the afternoon. Well, actually, if the PM girls say it's okay for us to stay on a few minutes extra, show me some love and tell me whether it's okay to stay on for some extra questions, and then we'll go into the PM session after we're done with our questions. I'm not seeing a bunch of them, but the ones I'm seeing, I'm going to say, okay, so I'm not seeing a bunch of them, but we're going to go ahead and we'll ask a couple more questions. I've got one up here, and then I see Maya's got her finger up. She wants to ask a question. So we'll stay on this. Don't go to the PM session yet, because you'll just get a message that we're still in session. So
I think somebody talking about the Spanish. Jasmine Gonzalez asked about how I relearned Spanish. If you want, Mary, I can answer that, and it's quickly.
Sure.
So
in Spanish, you're going to answer it in Spanish, or so?
Sure.
Yeah,
Jasmine,
yeah. I want to see if I can
habla,
pick anything up.
Yeah, Jasmine habla español. so Jasmine, I always spoke Spanish, so it wasn't like I needed to retake the basics. My issue was speaking in the technical terms in Spanish, because when I went to college, all the books were in English, and we learned the technical portions of engineering in English. And then I started working in the United States right after graduation. When I came back 6 years ago, there are technical terms in Spanish that I had never used. So that to me was the lingo of aviation, of just civil engineering. And that's what I had to relearn. I had never really learned that at all. So I needed a lot of help from the locals to understand, like, for example, bridge slab, it's a losa. And I'm like, okay, losa to me was a tile in the bathroom. So I didn't know it was the slab for the bridge. So there were a lot of those little kinks and things that I even have a dictionary that's a civil engineering dictionary, English and Spanish. And I had to go there to see, how do I say roughness in Spanish? How do I say approach in Spanish? I didn't know. So that's where I said that I had to relearn that Spanish part. But I never stopped speaking Spanish, because my family, everybody lives in Puerto Rico. So I would come back and visit every 3 to 4 times a year. Spanish is still my native language. Me encanta el español. Puedo hablar en español también.
That's great. That's great. So, and Anushka said, what steps did you take to get to where you are at today? But I mean, we talked a little bit about it in the presentations, and I will share that with all of you afterwards. But were there any specific steps, or did you plan in advance? You knew what you were going to do? Either, both?
Yep. I'll answer on my behalf. So growing up, I did not know I wanted to be an engineer. I was never exposed to the world of engineering. It wasn't until I was 22 and I got a job where I'm working now as a project coordinator. And that's when I was exposed to the world of engineering. I really loved it. And I thought, those engineers have a way better job than I do. It's more fun. It's hands-on. They get to test stuff. They get to see how things work. I want to do that. And so, yeah, they definitely make more money than what I was making at the time. And so all the way around, it was just fascinating. And then that's when I just walked into my boss's office and was like, how do I be an engineer? Go get your engineering degree. And so didn't really think twice about it. Okay. I mean, honestly, I didn't know anything about electrical engineering. I knew you needed electricity to turn on lights and power, but I knew nothing about it. But that's why I did the trade school. For me, it made sense. We had engineers at this company that had gone through the program. They had a great hands-on program that a lot of people spoke highly about. And it really taught me everything I needed to know, the basics. And then a lot of it was on the job training. But that's where it started, was being around it.
And I'm not, I think there's a lot of, I was a machinist. That was my very first job. Well, other than the ones that I got when I was in high school, but I worked with my hands. So I learned a trade before I went back to become an engineer. And I think it's very important for girls to understand, if you like working with your hands and you think, hey, I'm going to be a hairdresser, or I'm going to be a cosmetologist. And the reality is, if you're going to stand on your feet all day, you should probably be welding instead, because you're going to make a whole lot more money as a welder than you are going to make as a hairdresser. And so it's one of those things that, just think about it a little bit. There's a lot more money in the trades and in engineering than there is in some of the other fields. And until that's balanced, we should take advantage of it.
I believe so. So I think that I was very young when I started liking all the space and NASA and everything like that. So I think my first way of thinking I'm going to be an engineer someday was because I wanted to be an astronaut. And I got very curious of how you become an astronaut. I was good at math and science, so at school they would always send me to math competitions and to math and science camps, and I just kept at it. But I'll be honest, that when I was going to college, I had two acceptance. One, to become a journalist. I wanted to be a CNN anchor, and then another one to become a civil engineer. I got both acceptance with scholarships and everything. And I told my mom, you know what, Mom? I think I'm gonna go to engineering. I'll do communications on the side and just be a speaker. And this is what I've done. I've combined it. And so I didn't become a news anchor. I don't work at Univision. But I do a lot of these public speaking events and go to a lot of conferences because I do like the communications piece of it. And I don't regret not becoming a journalist or a news anchor. I think engineering has been pretty good to me, and I don't regret it. There's a lot that you can do. I now do business development and marketing because I'm developing an engineering business. So there's a lot that you can do with the engineering degree. It's not just calculations and building things. There are a lot of other things you can do as an engineer.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to make sure that we think about, the fact that an engineering degree is going to give you the best paying job straight out of school, straight out of a 4-year degree. When I retired as an engineer and without any kinds of a master's like you have, I was making $165,000 a year without my incentive, and over $200,000 with my incentive. And that was with a 4-year degree. There are not many degrees that you're going to be able to make that kind of moolah. So it's one of those things. And I got to do marketing. I got to do traveling. I got to do a lot of fun things. And it was not a bad gig at all. And I got to do music on the side. So that was the fun part, is you get to keep your hobbies because you can do them when you have the time. And I got to raise a family just like the two of you. So it was an awesome experience as an engineer. And, you can go into medicine, you can go into law, you can go into just about any field you want with an engineering degree, and they will be happy to find a job to hire you, regardless of what it is you want to do.
Engineers are problem solvers, so we can pretty much do anything, because if there's a problem to solve, we have the critical thinking skills to get us to solve that. And I was going to say before we go, Mary, Justina, I thought that story of you, of how you became an engineer because you were interested and took that self-initiative, that was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you know what? I had a similar story. Growing up, I wanted to be an actress, actually. I'm from San Diego. I moved to LA right out of high school to pursue a career in acting. When I got to LA, I was there 5 years getting an agent and speaking roles, but I soon realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do full time. It wasn't what I wanted to do as my main career. So when I came back here and got the administrative job to kind of support me, I have realized that pursuing the degree in engineering and you know, really establishing a career was the best decision for me. And everything that I learned in LA, I get to use now. Like she said, we do a lot of public speaking. We get to be the role model for young girls. We get to interact with them and communicate with them. So all of those skills, they are still used every single day. We go out and meet with clients and we talk with them, and you know, we do seminars and that kind of thing. And so you utilize all of those skills and things that are within you that you still like. All those talents are in there. You use them in engineering.
Yes, you do. And
You always have to say that story. That's a really cool story. The one about the actress, you should definitely say that. That was pretty cool too.
so, I mean, the point is, there are many of us that are very good at many things, oddly enough, and that it's going to happen more likely with females than it is with males, that you're good at both math and science and the arts. So you have this thing pulling you in one direction or the other. And from my perspective is, English and the arts are really easy to me. Math and the sciences are a little bit more challenging. So I want to go the easy way, but I know the easy way is not going to make me feel like I really achieved anything. So I have to go the hard way. I am that kind of a person that has to pick the hard way. And then I'm not going to get the A's. I'm going to get B's. And I'm going to get B's because I have a balanced life. But you have to look at the fact that girls frequently want the A's. And they say, if I'm not getting A's, it's too hard. And that's not the truth.
Right. If you do decide to go into STEM fields, into engineering, and you've always had straight A's your whole life, when you start college and get that first D, that's when you realize, oh, I have to put myself in, I got to do this. So I had some interesting things happen in college where I was like, what? No more A's, straight A's. And I had to work really hard, but don't get discouraged. It doesn't mean that you're not good for it or that you're not wired to be an engineer. It's just a different way of thinking. Hey, we get through it, and I graduated super with like magna cum laude. I studied. But at the first time when you see that first D, you're just like, oh my God, I'm gonna flunk. I'm not gonna become an engineer. No, you get over it and you go back and do better, okay?
Sonara, if we have time, had a question as well.
Let's just do this last question. So if you were searching for, and how would you go about searching for an internship today? I don't know how you found your internships, but and I know Madeline would be a good one to ask, because that was at a first robotic, or no, it was a SWE thing, right? It was at a SWE event, Justina.
Yeah, I met Madeline at the SWE open house in 2018, I believe. But again, she took the initiative and reached out and asked, do you have any internships available? And I thought, well, I'm not sure, but let me ask. And so I asked, but it was really her taking that first step and going for it, asking who she knew, the resources she had, and it opened up a great opportunity for her.
There are tons of companies that have engineering programs. At least in college, they always come twice a year to promote their internship programs. Societies like SWE has a huge career fair, but I found mine on the bulletin boards in college when that was, this is more than 17 years ago. They had a post about the NASA internship, and I just applied and sent all my application. Back then you had to send paper. Now you probably do it all online. But you look for those opportunities. Every company has an internship program. Most of 99% of them do. When I do recruiting in colleges, we always go for summer internships and then some co-ops. Some companies have full year co-ops. So there are a lot of different ways, but definitely if you're interested in a company, let's just say you want to work for Kimley Horn with me, you go online and you check under opportunities or careers, and there's always there listings of internships, and most likely it's going to be a summer internship because those are the most common.
Okay, we have to go because I understand we have some kids, and I'm not sure. I'm just taking a look-see here. Looks like the 2UU room has quite a bit of work to do. But I just want to share the last piece of advice from Dr. Nguyen, who is the advisor for the Poway High School SWE Next and Team Spider for First. She said SWE is one of the best ways to get connected and with people that may know and may be able to help you find internships. So joining SWE Next and getting connected in there and meeting people like me and Justina and Eleeen is the way that you're going to be able to, the fastest way to get internships and to find out a little bit more about co-ops. So without further ado, thank you so much, Eleeen, and thank you, Justina, for joining us today and sharing your experience. I think it's been a unique perspective from both of you, and yet there's so much in common we all have, huh?
Yeah,
Always.
thank you. This has been great. You all have so much potential, and it's great to see you all here. And Eleeen, it's been great getting to know you. I'm inspired by you.
It's mutual. It's mutual. Thank you so much, Mary, for inviting us and for joining Justina and I. That was really cool.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
happy.